your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends in mobility with leaders and innovators who make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Stephen Jenkins, Vice President, Technology and Strategy, Magna International. On today's episode, we'll discuss how two industry giants, Magna and NVIDIA, are joining forces to redefine autonomy through artificial intelligence, advanced compute, and scalability. We hope you enjoy this episode. Stephen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me. Really looking forward to it.
It's great to have you here. There's one thing that Magna does extremely well. I know you do a lot of things well, but there's one thing to me that you do extremely well. You never stop innovating. You never stop building for the future. You're building all these great components for some of the world's leading manufacturers. You have a great contract manufacturing business. You're always innovating and always looking to the future. And recently, the company just announced a partnership with NVIDIA. How did that partnership come together, and what is the goal of that partnership?
We have a very good alignment on our needs and our requirements and our desire to change things going forward. I mean, it's not something that we take lightly to work with a partner or to work with a company that helps to gain advantage in the future. But we see, for example, that the ecosystem, the partner network, the tooling, software tools, hardware tools, everything is very well in line with what we're trying to do. So it made very good sense for us.
As part of that partnership, you're going to be able to leverage the Blackwell GPU. What is that going to allow your engineers to build? Are they going to build something really cool, really new? What's that going to allow them to build?
I mean, it's a platform. It's one of those ones where there's an answer I can give you today of things we know, and then there's an answer in 2 or 3 years' time, which are things we don't know. And of course, those generations will keep on coming out of the tooling plant as well. We know there's going to be a next generation as well. I would say I'd answer the question more generic and say all of these new generations of SoCs, that they get more and more powerful, just open up a completely new world for us. It means where we had to compromise before on processing the data in the world, because the world's a complicated place. There's a lot happening. You see a lot, and you add more cameras, more radars, more lidars, more sensors to the mix, thermal and everything. You see more and more and more, and you don't want to compromise and have to cut off the data. And so this is what those architectures and these very high performance SoCs and ECUs help us to do, is to be able to interpret the world around us in a much better way.
See, the thermal's interesting. So you have the thermal, you have the radar, you have the lidar, you have the camera, and now you have the NVIDIA chipset. Now the next piece of the pie is the software. Are you developing that in-house Magna solely? Are you working with partners? Are you perhaps running on the NVIDIA CUDA? How is that working?
We do the same. We do a mix of everything, and it's very dependent on customer and also what we are having in-house experience and we're not having in-house experience. I mean, it's important to remember that you should focus on your strengths and you should leverage other strengths, and you should help and cover others' weaknesses, right? So in some cases, customers, they have their own software in-house. They want to use that. That makes a lot of sense. They've invested in it. We help them to put that in a platform where we are part of the system, right? So maybe they have a perception stack or drive policy stack that navigates, and will help them with a middleware and making sure the system is up and running and it's functional and it's producible and it's working in all the things, the housekeeping, like making sure that it's still alive and there's nothing that's crashed and all those kind of things, or maybe the over-the-air updates, or maybe the security module to communicate with other units and so on and so forth. So that's one instance could happen if a customer has their own stack they're preferring. They could also say they want a third party that they've chosen, or it could be that they want us to do it. And we have our own in-house software as well for drive policy, parking, and so on and so forth. Or we could leverage the NVIDIA network if there's some hybrid version. But software is such a broad thing. It's especially in ADAS today. A long time ago, it was very easy, very well contained. You had your radar, it had its software, you were done. You had your camera, it had its software, you were done. Now they're all intertwined. You have these big machine learning models, you have, extreme amounts of data and processing and understanding and real training and so on. So I would say we do a mix of everything, depending on the customer, depending on the scenario.
I'm going to go back to the kitchen analogy. So you have a lot of chefs on the line. How do you get all the chefs to point in the direction that you want it to go, instead of having one piece of software point here, one piece point there? How do you get it all to go in the same direction?
Yeah, you have to be smart, and that's a very good point. You can't open every question for every situation. You have to make your choices. So you make a choice on for example, a number of SoCs you want to support. And we have a number. We don't just use NVIDIA. We have a number of SoCs we support in the ecosystem, both historically and also what we're working on now. But there's difference between working together with someone and just buying it and using it. And you can't do ultimately unlimited amounts of that. It's hard to manage. Then you have a layer on top of that, which is kind of your subsystem, how you communicate with the vehicle. That's generally quite standardized. So you kind of buy that and you use it, and the customer sometimes dictates it. Then you have, as I said, the housekeeping functions. There we can start to look into, okay, is there off-the-shelf solutions that save us time, or do we want to do something in-house? And et cetera, right? You have all these different layers, and you choose the right one for your strategy. And when you do that, you have to take in mind that it all should work together. So you shouldn't have a completely different strategy for your radar product than your camera product and your domain controller product. It should be in line. So that's how we do it. We have regular roadmap follow-ups. We have regular steering groups. We have our tools and process strategy, our software strategy, and our teams are very well aligned.
Magna has a lot of diverse customers. Some of your customers even compete with one another. When it comes to the chipset, is it based on the customer preference? Is that how the chipset chosen? The customer comes to you and says, "Okay, Stephen, we'd like to use the NVIDIA chipset, or we'd like to use the Qualcomm chipset, or we'd like to use like a Renis or different chipsets." Is that from the customer that's making that decision?
I'd love to give you a yes or no, but it's the same answer as before, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I would say there's an openness to that. So years ago, when we started out with these kind of products, it was very dictated by the tier ones. The tier one said, "I've developed my product on this solution. Here it is. It works according to your specifications. Please use it." Right? That's how it used to work. Then as more software became into play, there was a lot of bigger questions. The question of, do you combine domains in the vehicle? Do you want a fully centralized or fully decentralized unit? Do you have other purchases through the same supplier and so on? So more of the customers that want to add their value on top of this, either if it's infotainment or their own niche or their own tuning. I mean, a car should feel like the manufacturer. You buy the car because you like the manufacturer. You want it to feel like that manufacturer. So they're more and more involved in the decision making, and there's often a number of choices that they can make during that time. And of course, we help them with that by saying, this is the advantages of this option or that option, or this is the potential that you can do with this and with that and so on. But I think it's a mix dependent. And the customer that's maybe doesn't want to think about it too much, they just want to plug something in and it works, they'll take our choice. And the customer that says, I really want to be involved and add value to this product, they'll be more inclined to be involved in the decision.
You said probably the most important thing, feels like the manufacturer. It's on brand. If you're going to buy a certain type of vehicle, you want it to drive like a certain type of vehicle, you want the ride to be like that. It's oh God, let's go back to the late 80s, early 90s. This is when Don Shula was still coaching the Miami Dolphins, and he was the Cadillac man. Oh, it's smooth as a Cadillac. And that was that whole, you knew that it was the Cadillac ride. And then if you're in obviously the Porsche has different engines, but you know that. But that's on brand. And that's what the consumers want. And the consumer wants are changing. They want the infotainment to work, but they also want the autonomous driving. NVIDIA, one of your partners, has the ability to do in-vehicle entertainment, which they've done very successfully, and provide the compute power to do autonomous driving functions. With your partnership, will you focus on both sides, both inside the vehicle for customer experiences and the autonomous driving functions as well?
Yeah, I think we'll focus where we can add value. Again, I think when we can add value in both those domains, we have experience. And again, it's dependent on the customer. So in a lot of cases, the customer likes to keep control over the infotainment piece because that's the thing you really feel as a customer, right? So, but that doesn't make a difference to us, because if they do that, we can still provide the hardware, everything up until the software piece, and they can put their software on top and so on. And these things aren't extremely bespoke like they used to be. There's a lot of synergies. You have your Apple CarPlay and your Google and so on and so forth. You have all of these things where there's a kind of a standardized Android Auto and so on. You have your standardized feeling in the car, and then they're adding their things on top. So we can do all of this, and we also look internally in the car with other features and functions, like we have the driver monitoring, which has previously been just a regulation, especially in Europe. But now you're starting to see there's a potential to be able to add value to the driver on rewarding them by giving them higher availability of systems. If they're paying attention, for example, instead of having to hold the steering wheel, knowing how they're sitting so that you know that their seatbelt is going to behave correctly if there's an accident, knowing if there's passengers, understanding if you've left a child in the car, all those kind of things as well interior. So these kind of things can connect also to the infotainment system. And as we start to see the blurring out of the boundaries between those two systems, you also maybe want to say, if I notice the driver is seeing something in the real world, I won't warn for it, for example. If I notice that there's some behavior that the driver experiences when I'm tuning the car in a certain way, driving too aggressively, driving not aggressive enough, I can tune the system. So there's a lot of potential there.
On the driving monitoring, one of the things, I have a lot of friends that are doctors, and they always talk about when you have driver monitoring for cardiacs, and they start saying these horrific stories, which I won't regurgitate here, of cardiac incidents in moving vehicles. Are you seeing any of the health monitoring going into the driver monitoring system?
Yeah, we're getting more interest in it actually, and we've done a lot of research and experimentation with time of flight cameras and internal radars in the vehicle and so on. So you can get pretty good, and also of course cameras, traditional cameras. So you can see a lot of warning signals. We've experimented with driving under the influence, with being able to see the eye patterns, being able to manage, potential risks with accelerated breathing or detachment and so on. And yeah, we're getting more interest from especially some of the more luxury car makers to have this kind of functionality built in as well.
Are you seeing any interest for body temperature? Because if somebody's starting to feel ill, their body temperature starts to go up. Are you seeing any interest from your partners to monitor body temperature?
Not necessarily on our perspective. It could be that it's used as part of a holistic system, but that's just one trigger. I mean, you've got a lot of other triggers as well, as I said, like shallow breathing or attentiveness or, excessive blinking or something like that. There's a ton of things you can trigger on. And when you have these, you have a regulation coming in for the child left behind, for example. There you already have something that can measure that people are in the car, and you can get certain signals, and you have a camera because of driver monitoring in certain cases. You can use that, and there's a ton of things you can actually do with the things you already have. But of course, that would be one thing as well that could be adding value.
Do you see the driver monitoring from a hardware perspective? Do you see that being a camera radar stack? Is that how you see it from a hardware perspective? Or do you see other pieces of components going into that?
So we scale it, actually. So we say, if you want to just fulfill, European or whatever regulations, you can just have a camera as it stands today and get enough points to pass. But then we say if you want to have more functionality, you have a camera and a radar internally in the vehicle, or a radar only if you need to fulfill other, because each geography unfortunately has their different regulations and their different requirements. But then as you start to add to that, we have a time of flight camera, which can detect how a person is really positioned in the car. You have a interior occupant camera, which can see more than just the driver, for example. So we try to package it and say, if you want these features, you need these components. And if you want more features, you need more components. And there's some level of overlap between those as well. So
you like components. That's the core of your business. So that's a good thing. If you look at components, autonomy, autonomous driving is made up of a series of components. How is Magna currently thinking about autonomous driving? And do you view that as a growth market for the company?
Yeah, I mean, we focused quite clearly around on our internal product offering when it comes to the driver stack and so on. We focus more on the volume market. So we're saying, okay, our strategy is really, we want this to be accessible for as many people as possible because it adds a lot of comfort and safety functionality and drivability and so on and so forth, right? So, and if you focus too high in that stack, you get a very small volume and a very small market, but it's also more development and so on as well. So it's more future. So we've made the choice of saying we're in the kind of the level up to level 2++, level 3 space at the moment. That's where we're really focusing the most of our efforts. But partnerships with software companies allow us to go to level 4, and certainly the NVIDIA stack allows us to go also to level 4. So there's nothing stopping us from taking that jump, but our majority of our effort is in that space. Component-wise, it doesn't make as much difference as you would think, because now the camera market is pretty stable with roughly the resolution, and everyone is doing pretty similar things, and and so on and so forth. Radar is the same. There's quite stable. There's quite a well-known, well-defined. It's more about the numbers of these sensors that make a difference. So if you have more, you get, of course, a better view of the world around you, but you also have to process more data. So you need more processing power when you do this central compute, for example. So this is where I think we have a good advantage, because we can complement it with our thermal, and we can complement it with other experience we have with different sensors as well.
Is your thermal technology, is that developed in-house?
So the sensor itself, we use a partner, but the packaging and the system and the software is done in-house, yeah. And it's been done for quite some time in-house.
This goes back, as I know I've said this many times, but it goes back to the engineering strength of Magna. I want to dive into level 3 here. Where's that demand coming from? Is that coming from the EU? Is it coming from UK, Scandinavia? Is it coming from APAC, US? Where are you seeing that demand for L3? Because here in certain parts of America, it's L2 plus or plus plus, and the L3 kind of it went like an old movie, went bye-bye. But it seems that, but yet globally, where's that demand coming from?
So, I mean, I would say, I would actually change the question slightly, if I may, and that is that when you get to level 2++ and level 3, you're actually pretty similar when it comes to feature requirements, right? The difference is really the availability, and the availability means you have to have more robustness in the system, and the robustness of the system isn't very visible to the user, right? So you might not be able to activate level 2++ in certain scenarios. You should be able to activate level 3, for example, or vice versa. But it's really functionality-wise, you want to have something that can drive you these urban NOA and city NOA and highway NOA functionalities, where you can get from point to point. You press the button, you say where you want to go, the car takes you there, and you can do all that. So I wouldn't say there's a big difference between level 2++ and level 3 in driver experience, other than the availability. As I said, the fact that it can be turned on or off, and the fact you're responsible or not responsible, that's the huge difference between the two. Sensor-wise, there's a little bit more sensors required for level 3 than level 2++. Compute-wise, you need to have more redundancy between level 2++ and level 3, and the question about who's responsible and what happens if there's an accident and so on is really unresolved, right? So that, with that said, that was a long way of answering the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, it's coming from the demand from customers that have been starting to experience this. And I'd say the biggest change in this has been in China the last few years, where the base level expectation from the market is you have level 2+ functionality in every car, basically. And you can go and you can rent vehicles today that have really good feature sets. They work very, very well. They're well defined and so on, but they're not really level 3. I would say it's still quite level 2++. And there, the understanding of what you get is very high, because the availability is everywhere. And it's really like a tick in the box. You buy a car, you want to have this functionality. Outside of China, it's still spreading slowly. So there's groups of people that have their Teslas or their vehicles with these more advanced feature sets. They're starting to pull, but that's still isolated areas. So I would say the growth is pushed mostly by the demand from the OEMs globally, and in China it's pulled from the customers. And I think we're starting to see that shift out of that.
If you look at the Chinese auto market, there's actually 2 major trends that I've picked up, and I'd love to get your take on if you see them exporting. One, somebody in China decided to do the Apple strategy with the dongles, where everything is an add-on, and these certain cars where, you got to get this, and you have to keep buying on the add-ons to get the true car, and then subscriptions. Are those I don't know if America's going to go for dongles. We pay for Netflix, so yes, the subscriptions will probably come. What are your thoughts on those 2 trends, and where do you see them going?
I mean, I'd like to think there's a future where you can choose what you get. And I'm not necessarily saying that there's I don't like the kind of concepts where you pay for things you should really already have, or you should already have expectation for. But I mean, as a personal preference, and especially since I'm probably not the target market for 10 years or 15, 20 years in the future, it's my kids, right? They're more used to paying for these transactions. So imagine that they can say, I have a car or I have a service with a car, and I today want to use this level 4 functionality only between this trip from this place to this place, and I'm prepared to pay an extra $10 for it instead of paying the $100,000 up front for that system or whatever it is part of the car, right? I mean, that would be quite logical to me. Paying for things that really should be included is very difficult, and I don't think that's going to take off in the near term, actually. So I'd prefer to say, better instead that we focus on making sure it's available to more people by making it more accessible price-wise and getting them to choose the packages up front during the time they buy the car. There are some things that are difficult to do that way, maps and updates, right? Because I think one thing that's difficult with automotive ADAS today is that the expectation so far hasn't been that there's a lot of updates in your car like there is with your mobile phone or your TVs or anything else, right? But it will come in the future, and there has to be an infrastructure to deliver that value in the future as well. And somebody has to pay for that, and that could warrant a subscription service. But you expect more value as a customer, and I think that's fair as well. And the second thing is things like maps or services where it needs to be updated because it becomes very fast. I mean, do you remember the old days when you had like a CD or a DVD that you put in the back of the car, and it was like, by the time you used it after 4 or 5 years, the road structures were completely different. It was completely useless. I would be thinking that kind of thing is also reasonable to expect some kind of subscription or update fee as well for.
I had one of those big giant, after that, I had that big giant Garmin that you would suction cup to the front of the car. And the maps were horrible. Oh, unincorporated area. We don't know where to go. And I would just get dead end in this certain. I was like, okay, but there's a road here. Where do I go? Yeah. So that's changing. It's amazing. And then I would go, God, I'll give you another one. If you post that, you go back to MapQuest. I remember the first time I experienced MapQuest, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Wow, I can get directions at home. I don't have to call somebody that lives in this area. So yes, the technology is changing. When you look at younger kids, so let's say you have a child that's 10, 11 today, even go as high as 15. The older, let's say 13 and older, are used to microtransactions. They're playing Roblox, or they're playing a video game. Oh, it's 99 cents to buy a sword. Oh, it's 50 cents to buy a shield. So they're used to that. Is that do you see that trend going to the cars? Because they're so used to it where you clearly said 10 miles, let's just call $1 a mile, $10. Oh, this is great. Is that kind of where this is going to go?
I mean, I could expect it could go there. Yeah, I would. As I said, I'm not the ideal person to buy those services right now. But that's not irrelevant. That's irrelevant because it's not me in the future that will be doing that, right? And you think about my kids, they use these kind of the Lyft and those scooters and things like that. They don't mind paying couple of dollars to be able to go faster into town or something instead of waiting for someone to give them a ride. That's fine for them, as you said, the microtransactions. And again, if you have the choice to use a service when you need it, maybe that's something that is future proof. But I think before we get to that point, we have to have a much more robust base level, right? So level 2++, level 3, level 4 has to be well defined properly. The services you get can't just be you get a bad experience or a slightly better experience if you pay a little bit more. It should be that it should be valuable to you as a person. And I think we have a lot of work to do there. Software in automotive is quite new, and it's still a lot of things to iron out before we get to that point. And like I said, for example, maps. I'm not talking about the free navigation maps you get on your phone because they're pretty good. I use them all the time myself. I'm talking about the maps to be able to give you a comfortable ride and take decisions for you and understand the environment around you and give you a reliable service, for example. All these kind of things, they have to be updated and maintained. And when you get to a base level that's good, I think you're more prepared to pay extra for premium for something you want for a certain period of time. So again, if you asked me a number of years ago, if I would pay for a Spotify subscription service every month, I'd probably say, that's crazy. I prefer to own physical CDs, but I'm pretty happy with it now. So.
Yeah, or if I asked you, do you want to the ad? Okay, one ad every 60 minutes. Okay, now it's just do. So you're right. I pay for it and you pay for it. We have no choice now. We're used to it. Same thing with Netflix. I pay for the premium because I don't want the ads in between there. And your customers, they want value. When they're going to buy a vehicle, they want value. They want it to stand for something. And you and I know, and this audience knows, the automotive landscape is changing. What it was 10 years ago is not what it is today. It's not going to be what it is 10 years ago. A large base of Magna's traditional customers are large OEMs and individuals involved in that ecosystem. How are they thinking about this changing landscape? Because it's 7-year product refresh cycle. That doesn't really work anymore. Things move a lot faster. How are they thinking about this rapidly changing ecosystem and universe?
It's a big shakeup, and I would say it's for everybody involved in the whole ecosystem, not just the OEMs or the tier ones. It's everybody really involved because we have to change the way of thinking to a more dynamic environment. I mean, either you can fight against it or you can embrace it and do something with it. And I actually feel very positive nowadays. I feel like go back 7 or 8 years, the conversations we had felt very hard to explain because they were, we talked about things that seemed so far-fetched in automotive. But now if you're talking to most players, they all understand this and they've come a long way in this. So definitely it's uncomfortable. You used to a long period of time where things were very predictable and you could design something well up front and you get it in the 3 or 4 year cycle and you knew it was going to be okay until the end of life. And now you have to change the way you think, and it's uncomfortable. But it opens up for new players and opens up for new concepts. And as I said, the enablers like these new very powerful SoCs we're working with and the software environments that we're working with, they're starting to really take hold and effect. And that's why you start to see these high performance vehicles.
And if it couldn't change any faster, now you've got the explosion of AI. How are they thinking about that? Because it's not just work productivity. It's actually going into products now. It's going into user interfaces. How are they thinking about AI?
I mean, like I would say it's well known actually that for quite some time we've been using AI in products, and we've been using it in our own products as well. The previous generations of the cameras we deliver, the previous generations of the thermal we deliver as well have some level of AI in them as well. It's primitive compared to what's available today, but it started some time ago actually. So I would say it's a well-known fact that everyone is starting to embrace this, and it's, as you said, it's in the products. And as I said, camera products or vision products, they've been using neural networks for some time. It's not brand new for us. But now you're starting to see the scalability of it due to the accelerators available in these SoCs and hardware solutions. And outside of that, there's a ton of other things that I'm really excited about. And that's how you monitor and manage human behaviors in the car so you can mirror the expectations better. How you can faster do your development cycles by, instead of doing a lot of manual work or data collection, you can use synthetic data, augmented data. You can use like a human exoskeleton to help you code faster and not repeat waste, to help you get further along when you do requirements analysis and so on and so forth, validation. And you have to be careful how you use it, right? You shouldn't. So I'm kind of a bit in the middle. I'm not fully embracing and saying it replaces everything. I'm not also saying it doesn't change anything. I'm somewhere probably closer to the optimist side of things, but not all the way there. And the reason for that is we're still working with safety products, so we can't just let everything go through AI channels, whether it's a training network or if it's a tool, and say we just trust the result. But imagine that instead of you having to read through thousands of requirements, you get a summary that you can read through instead, and you can go and check things if they don't make sense. Or as I've seen now in these more modern solutions, you can query, why did you take that decision? Or the drive policy can tell you, I'm about to do this in traffic because I see this and this and this, right? And imagine that feeling, instead of having to, is this parked car because it's a traffic light, or is this parked car because it's a bus stop, or is this parked car because it's a hotel? It's different. Or if a person stands outside the road or whatever, having that context and explainability helps you a lot. But you should always be remembering that we're working with safety critical systems. You need to have some level of caution.
Which raises the next, I love this. You usually have one side, then I go to the next side, which is, this is a lot of fun. How do you validate that the AI is accurate? Because you're right, you're dealing with, I'll use the term critical safety functions. Is there a way to put a trust layer, of a validation layer, or how? Because your customers, you can't say, let's call Acme customer. Hi, Acme customer, here you go. Well, Stephen, how did you verify it? How did you, customer, I'm very sorry, here you go. How do you create that validation trust level?
There's lots of different strategies for this, and I wouldn't say there's one that's the absolute best. There's a lot of different strategies depending on solution. So early on, when we did the vision products, we used to validate by saying, here's the data in, here's the expected result. And you could say, what happens in the middle, we don't really need to think too much about, because as long as we know we've covered the input, the output, and we know they validated against each other, the KPIs are matching on the critical areas, we've got enough data, we've got enough test cases around it, we know it's going to work. And then, of course, you do your manual validation at that point in time as well, because that was back in the day how you would do everything as well, and say it's comfortable, it works, we've done all the miles we're supposed to, and so on and so forth. There's other ways to do it nowadays, which is a kind of A to B comparison. You have a subset which is using an older generation of the algorithm, or a different generation of algorithm, or a more how can I say, hard-coded or traditionally developed algorithm, and you compare it to your result in your modern one, and you see, does it behave the same? Is it doing the same thing? Did it see the same things? Is it behave, and so on and so forth. You can do that as well. And then you've got these other strategies, which is to put guardrails around and say it can never do anything outside of these boundaries. And you set the boundaries based upon the kind of the feature set that you have and what you think is important and so on. So the thing is that in level 2+ systems or plus systems, you still have the driver involved, and you just need to make sure you don't make very big maneuvers that would be hard to catch. And you have to make sure that you're having a consistency and an expected result as well. But there are many strategies to get that to work. And as long as you do one of those and you do them in steps or around the whole system, you can get pretty good argumentation.
Do you think then that opens the door to independent third parties to validate, or kind of, if you want to put the good housekeeping seal of approval to stamp it, where, let's say, all the legislative bodies, the regulatory bodies say, okay, company A is certified for this, and that kind of becomes I don't want to call it a regulatory body, that's a bad word, but that independent party that everybody agrees to, quote unquote, work towards that standard, and then they validate it?
Yeah, you kind of have that indirectly. So today you have things like the ISO standards for functional safety and SOTIF and cybersecurity and those kind of things to make sure you don't escape through those things. And they kind of cover how you develop to make sure you're thinking properly. You have an architecture design, you have a validation chain, you're following a certain process, and everyone's doing the same thing. You have state-of-the-art expectation on you as well, which is included in this, which says you have to have done a certain evaluation of your product, a certain validation chain and so on. But it's getting harder and harder because these things move so fast that how does a standard that's delivered in a cycle of 5 to 10 years keep up with what's happening in a 6-month cycle? So I think it's a lot of responsibility on us as well to make sure we do the right thing. But I do see in the future, you're right, when it stabilizes, I'm sure there will be more robust and as I said, you have regulatory already in some respect. You have these regulations, the GBs in China, you have the FMVSSs, and those kind of things as well that help you with certain parts of it. And you have also consumer ratings like NCAP that test the system in real life scenarios and so on. But there's not one holistic, and I do think that should be something that comes in the future as well.
What we do know, there's a lot of things coming in the future, a lot of cool things, a lot of things that Magna is going to build and participate in. Stephen, in your opinion, what is the future of Magna?
So, I mean, we want to keep on leveraging our advantages and strengths, not for our own sake only. Of course, that's what we do. We're a business, but to help gain the market a better product, right? And I think that's where, when we stop innovating, when we stop thinking about what we can do to make things better, that's when we're not Magna anymore. And so I think Magna in the future is going to keep on being part of these bigger trends, working with new things and trying to improve the experience for both our customers and our end users in the end as well, to make sure we have as good products as we can and solving these big questions. So I'm very excited to work at Magna because we have access to such a wide portfolio, right? So my time at Magna has been amazing because I don't just have what I used to have, I also have all of these other things that I can start to delve into and say, hey, if we could control the powertrain, what could we do there? Hey, if we put things in the mirror, what could we do there? Hey, if we started to look at the lighting, what could we do there, etc. And that's great. And having this portfolio of sensors also helps me because I can say, hey, if we use them differently than everybody else, because we have the experience of exactly how they work and the background and so on, we can start to really squeeze more out. So that's what I'm looking forward to with Magna, growing into this area.
And to our audience that's inspired by what Stephen just said, I would say, never stop thinking about the future. Stephen's doing that at Magna, and Magna's building world-class products. Stephen, as we look to wrap up this insightful conversation, what would you like our listeners to take away with them today?
Yeah, I'd like to say, of course, I'd like you to think about embracing such of these changes that are coming in the automotive industry and start to think about how you can be benefited by this. I think there's a real potential here to have more safe drives when you're more rested, when you feel better about your drivability and so on and so forth. And, learn about it and don't take it for granted and don't turn it off. So help us to make it usable.
I'll summarize it this way. Embrace change, build the future. Today is tomorrow, tomorrow is today. The future is Magna. Stephen, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.